All right. Hey, Millen. So good to see you. What's so funny is you and I were both at TKS at the same time. I was a director, you were a student going through the program, but we never met then. We
That's right.
I know we never really crossed paths. You were in a different program than me. And then weirdly enough, full circle moment, now through Boardy we're meeting, which is really, really funny and interesting. And today we are going to get you on the Boardy Fellowship. How do you feel about that?
I'm so excited, and Bordy's already the master super connector that it is for two people like us who've never met before. So I'm really
Yeah,
excited to get this stuff going.
that's awesome. Okay, so before we jump into everything, do you want to just give us a little Cole's notes background on who you are, where are you at right now? What are you working on? And kind of why do you want to do the fellowship? Like, what are you hoping to get out of it?
Of course, like Neil said, my name is Milind Kumar. Right now, I'm based in Waterloo. I go to school at the University of Waterloo. I'm in my third year of mechanical and management engineering, so that's been a lot of fun being in the engineering space, connecting with the community here at Waterloo. I'm really into generally just like entrepreneurship, innovation, startups, and all that. So I've been really involved with Socratica, which I know has been a
Ah,
big viral hit online with symposium and things like that. So I've been helping
yeah,
going to sessions, helping to organize the big event. So that's been a lot of fun in my own time as well. And yeah, I'm really interested in the Boardy Fellowship, just for a lot of the great connections and opportunities that I'd be able to get out of it.
yeah.
I'm really curious in general about learning about new technologies, sciences, anything that's kind of emerging in our world today. And I know Boardy Fellowship is more AI focused, which is something I'm looking to get a lot more into and starting to get more into. So I'm really excited about just the opportunities and the people I'll be able to meet and learn from throughout this fellowship.
That's awesome. And I love that you're really open-minded in terms of yeah, I'm open to meeting all kinds of people. I'm open to meeting like a lot of different connections because I think it is that serendipitous sort of like the connection that you didn't even think you needed that ends up being the one that unlocks a lot of doors for you. So I think that's totally the right attitude to get to like the right approach. But I'm also curious, is there like in terms of where your next steps are, or like where you're kind of looking in the next few months, are you interested in, are you hoping to get a really interesting internship in a particular field? Like, are you looking for connecting with mentors? Are you building something that you're looking to get funding on? What does the next kind of ideal next couple of months look like for Milland?
Yeah, I can get a little more into kind of my personal story in a little bit, but what I'm actually building currently is a education platform designed specifically for cancer patients. So I
Wow.
can talk more about my journey, kind of as someone who had gone through it in a follow-up question or something. But it was something where, as someone who had been through cancer treatment, I know some friends, family members who had been through it as well. A big gap that I had noticed in the space is that there wasn't a lot of really clear and easy access to education materials for people about cancer treatment. And this is something that really kind of conflicts with a lot of medical practice and things like that because health literacy, especially in cancer, where there's so much change that you're going through, there's so much you need to track and medications and all that stuff. It costs Canada billions and billions of dollars a year in losses from sort of this non-compliance that patients have. So it's something where I'm working with another co-founder who's based out of Kingston, whose aunt is a cancer patient education nurse. So we're working to hopefully build out a platform where we can help people throughout their cancer journey. It would be sort of like a buddy that's on the side with them that can help track symptoms, track patterns and symptoms to see if there's any issues that are arising, provide education material specifically for their type of cancer treatment or the stage of cancer treatment they're at, help them understand what are some important questions I should be asking my doctors, nurses, medical staff, things like that. So that's something that I'm starting to build out and hopefully planning to use a lot of my time in the summer to build that out. And I'm excited to hopefully use the fellowship as opportunity to get a lot of mentorship experience in this space. I'm kind of newer-ish to building software and these type of applications. So really excited to hopefully make a lot of good connections and get some good advice for building this out.
Wow. Okay. So I feel like we touched a little bit on this, but I know you have a really profound personal story. And I remember when you were first telling me about it when we first chatted, I was just streaming tears while you were talking to me and just was not being very subtle about it at all. But I don't, if you're willing to share, I would love for other people to kind of hear the journey you've been through.
Yeah, of course. So I had touched on it just recently, but it was sort of just after summer of grade 10 ended, where all of a sudden just randomly spurs up some back pain and just vomiting and all these different symptoms that were kind of randomly just coming on at once. And so I was in and out of hospital for a couple days. They're going through their whole checklist of what they thought it would be. Nothing was making sense with tests and all that. And so the final test that they had to do was a bone marrow test for potential leukemia detection. What I heard was, oh, very, very low chance, sort of last item on our list. We're not really concerned about it. But then after it happened, we actually got the diagnosis that yes, it was leukemia. And so this was me sort of just after turning 16 years old, not someone who at that point had really thought about too far into the future, really even questioned sort of my own like mortality. I was sort of growing kid and thought, oh, this is just how life's going to be. I'm going to keep growing, getting stronger, whatever. And then, yeah, all of a sudden that happened. So it made me really have to basically rethink and reshift my entire life in a way, which was an experience that I didn't think that I would have to deal with at 16. I thought this was sort of like a parents slash even grandparents type issue. So it really got me thinking more about sort of how do I want to live my life on a day-to-day basis? Who are the types of people that I want to surround myself with?
Yeah.
And sort of brought along a lot more, I guess, urgency in my lifestyle. Not to sort of, I guess, just sit on the sidelines and follow whatever the typical path was, the school, the university, the job, the whatever, to be a lot more intentional about here are the types of experiences that I want to have, here are the types of, things I want to do in my life. And so that was a real sort of catalyst for me. And in the moment, as I was kind of going and suffering through a lot of treatment, uh, I was questioning a lot of sort of the why me questions and feeling hopeless and questioning why I had to go through such a difficult challenge. But kind of looking back on it almost 5 years later, I realized that it was something that honestly I probably needed at that time. And it's something that sort of, I guess, kickstarted me in a way. Not that I wish it upon anyone, but sort of something that sort of, I guess, forced me out of my comfort zone in such a way that I had to grow and to adapt and to become who I am to get
Yeah.
here today.
And do you find that a lot of those like that sense of urgency or that mindset of like it sounds like you're, the intentionality of like I need to live for myself and I need to make sure that I'm having the experiences that are going to help me grow and help me make the most out of my life. Like, do you find that, thankfully now you're over it and you're healthy and all of that is fantastic, but do you find that that mindset and that way of operating is something that's kind of stuck with you?
Yeah, definitely. Right up until this date, I'd say that having that sense of understanding the decision I would make and being comfortable and having the courage to follow that decision of what I would make and I would believe in rather than whether it's family or society or whatever might sort of expect of me, something that I think about a lot to this day. And honestly, sometimes, especially when I'm making kind of bigger decisions in my life, I think more about like what would 16-year-old me in that hospital bed, what would be the decision that he would make in something like this? So usually that's not the decision that maybe 15-year-old me would have made, but it's sort of the decision that I know if I'm in that situation again, sort of contemplating life, then wondering, oh, am I going to get past this whatever illness or something like that? That I make the decision that that version of me would have wanted me to make. Just it's a very good sort of, I guess, litmus test, if you'd call it, as a way to make sure I'm not having any regrets or big time things that I wish I didn't do, which I felt like at that point there were a lot of things where I felt like I wasn't making decisions that I wanted to make. I had just sort of made decisions that maybe others expected of me to make. And so it's something that definitely changed a lot of who I was coming out of it now.
You talked about the kind of courage that it takes, or like having the courage to, not do what your parents, your family, or society, like all these external forces want, and to really do what you want, and to kind of have the courage to go for that. And it's interesting because in a lot of ways, I feel like it does take almost like a life or death situation to really put that into perspective and to be like, well, this is my life. Like, like what do I have to lose? Of course, I'm going to go for what I want. And I think when you don't have that constraint, those fears can seem really big and they can feel really important. And then, but then when you put them into perspective with like, I may die, it's like, of course I'm going to do what I want to do. Right. So it's, tough, but also interesting that you were put in a situation where you really viscerally were able to feel that.
Yeah, exactly. And especially, not that I've had whether it's like midlife or quarter life crisis or whatever, but usually it takes sort of different types of events for different people, but it takes, a big change or a big hurdle for a lot of people to, I guess, realize changes that they need to make within their own lives. And, some of them are maybe mistakes they made by choice. Some of them are maybe mistakes that are, I guess, challenges that just come on upon to them without maybe some without any personal control. But yeah, it definitely takes uh, a sort of catalyst, I guess, to be able to realize, I guess, ways of living that maybe you didn't agree with, but you just didn't really notice until a moment like that happened. So yeah, in a sense, I guess I'm gladder it happened at a younger age than for me to have, I guess, continued living that way and it happened much, much later in life. So, I try and I guess take wherever positives I can from experiences like that and just hope to learn from them as much as I can going forward.
And I feel like I can talk to you about this for hours and hours and hours. I mean, but I do want to get you to the fellowship, and get you like joining and doing all that stuff. The one last question I'll ask you about this is I'm so curious, like you mentioned the kind of company or project that you're building, which is around like education or like companionship for cancer patients. I'm so curious, like when you were going through that experience, like you mentioned, you were noticing that that was something that was missing. Can you talk a little bit more how some of your own experiences informed the project that you're working on now?
Yeah, exactly. A big thing that I thought of, at least when wanting to build out this project, is my own experience of being someone who's very curious in general, someone who wants to understand how things work, someone who's very into STEM in general. And so, one of the biggest things that I was told initially, sort of right after I was diagnosed, is do not Google stuff. We
Yeah.
will give you all the information you need. This is from my healthcare team. And so, one that kind of threw me off, but of course, maybe I can understand them saying, yeah, we don't want you going down these rabbit holes and you seeing all these different studies, who knows what validity they have, and potentially getting like your hopes too high or your hopes too low or things like that. Just let us provide the information to you. But then, sort of with how the healthcare system is today, sort of Canadian healthcare in general and North American healthcare, you don't really get too much face-to-face time with your medical staff and the medical professionals and all that. Appointments are generally very, very short, so there's not a lot of time to really go deeper into questions that you have, concerns that you have, maybe key symptom trends or things like that. So that was sort of a big issue, I guess, for me that I had faced is I was kind of going through the motions of treatment without really knowing too much of what was going on, because face-to-face time again with them was very limited, and I was just staying off, medical internet and things like that. So it was something where I understood, and especially through my co-founder, whose aunt, like I mentioned, is a cancer patient education nurse. It was something that she also found that there is sort of this gap between patient understanding and sort of where the medical professionals hope that they should be so that they know why they're taking certain medications, what their different phases of treatment look like, what different biomarkers in their blood work look like, and how to help improve them. And so, really, what we want to try and do is provide some of these sort of medically vetted sources to help patients through their treatment journey. So it'd be something where if they know that they have like a bone marrow test coming up, maybe then within the days leading up to it, they get an article or video or something that's vetted by them about how this works, what to expect from it. Here are symptoms and side effects you can expect. Here's how to mitigate things.
Yeah.
Just because they don't have as much time. And honestly, it would be hard to remember conversations with medical professionals because we found that, especially in cancer patients, about 80% of it is kind of lost within 24 hours, especially as they're going through treatment and trying to remember this with all the symptoms they're facing and brain fog and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, we thought it's a solution that makes sense, and we've talked to a lot of medical professionals, and it seems like something that they're really hoping to get for patients too.
That's amazing. And I think it sounds like, a lot of maybe when people think about treatment and stuff like that, they're maybe focused on like the very physical aspect of like specific treatment, specific chemo, specific ways to just
Mhm.
get you better. But I think a big aspect is also the mental, emotional journey that you're going through. And so to feel like you don't know what's going on and you don't have any control or you don't have any sense of like agency over what's happening to you, I think, it sounds like what you're providing really helps with that piece, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the big goal too, is to help sort of provide support for you as you're on a journey that frankly kind of takes over your whole life at that point. Because at least in my case, I was like off school for the entire year and had to drop all these, outside commitments like sports and, often time with friends and going to whatever board games or parties or things like that. And so you have to, as much as you need to have sort of like the physical will to continue and like keep up with exercise and all that. The mental part is even more challenging because so much of what you value from sort of your life pre-cancer is kind of taken away from you all in that moment, and you don't know necessarily for how long. It depends all on how treatment is going, how cancer cells are reacting, things like that. So that's sort of a even more important part that hopefully with a platform like this and hopefully through a lot of discussions with appropriate medical professionals, we'll be able to help patients sort of better navigate.
Wow. Wow. Man, you are doing some really, really, really interesting stuff, and I'm excited. I'm excited to get you in front of Boardy. So let's make that happen.
Let's do it.